end of the month or early September, they will be shutting that off. So then you'll have to more than likely go through your campus help desk to get registered for Duo. Another point I want to make is Finance works best with Chrome or Firefox or Safari if you have a Mac. If you use IE or Edge, it will not work for you. You will get a bunch of weird errors and it just is almost impossible to use. So preferred browser is Chrome, Firefox, or Safari. So when you first log in, this looks completely different than HR or Campus Connection. This look and feel is called Fluid. Right now, we don't have any Fluid pages turned on except for your login page and then a user preference page. There's multiple phases to this travel and expense project. First phase is just to get everybody live on the regular, the pages that I'll be showing you is called the classic view. The next phase is going to be turning on the mobile application piece of it. That mobile application piece is called Fluid. So there will be another little tile here with that'll say expenses on there that you will click on. That'll be hopefully implemented by the end of the fiscal year, but depending on staffing resources, it might be the end of next calendar year. But it's a Fluid looks at it can tell the device that you're using. It'll automatically reformat the page based on the display of your device. So it will work really nice with your phone. You'll be able to take pictures with your receipts, attach it right to your expense receipt or your expense report right on the fly. So it'll be really nice. So again, this demo that I'm going to be doing is called, it's more of a classic view. You can use it on tablets and stuff. It does not work very well with mobile devices. So when you first log in, you'll see this Expenses Work Center. A Work Center is a one-stop shop. Everything that you will need to do that relates to expense reports will be located here. On the left-hand side, these are all the little links that you will need. Depending on the security that you have, most of you will just see what you see right now. If you happen to be an HR supervisor, you will have additional approval links. And then there's a Reports and Queries tab up here. So all the queries that you would need to run or may need are found right here. So the nice thing about the Work Center is when you click on a link, it will automatically bring up the page that you're going to work on the right-hand side, so you never have to navigate to a different page. If you're in Campus Connection or HR, there's a lot of clicking that you need to do to get to where you need to go. So the Work Center is, like I said, a one-stop shop where all your work needs to be done in one place. Lisa, are they delegating authority?
Am I delegating?
No, are staff able?
We have done that for a few.
The business office is doing it though?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want somebody to enter an expense report on your behalf, contact Lisa, and then they will set that up for you. So to enter an expense report, you just click on the Create Edit Report. If you are entering on someone's behalf, if you click the Lookup button, everyone that you have access to enter on will be available there for you. Otherwise, your employee ID will default in for you.
Is there any way to make this bigger?
A little better? Okay. All right, so I zoomed out a little bit so I don't have to scroll. Is that okay still, or is it kind of hard? Otherwise, there will be a lot of scrolling involved with this. Okay. So this top portion of your expense report we call the header section. Anything below this expenses portion down here is the line section. So up in the header, it gives the traveler. So if you're entering on someone's behalf, their name will appear here. Otherwise, it'll just be your name. Today, I'm playing Angela. Any field that is required will have an asterisk by it. So we do require a business purpose. This is just, this is going to be system-wide. So if you see something, or if you're traveling and none of these categories fit your business purpose, let Lisa know and they'll have to submit a ticket first because we'll have to add it because this is system-wide. So we'll just pick that and then just a short description. Reference we're not using at this time. Default location. So So if you're traveling to Bismarck, for example, if you enter it, this is an optional field. So if you enter something here, your default location is where you're going to. This will automatically insert it on all the expense lines, so you don't have to enter it in. However, if you're going to multiple stops throughout your trip, it doesn't make sense to set up the default because then you're going to have to go and change it on every single line. So just keep in mind this is optional. It's very useful if you are going to one destination or if the majority of your trip is at one place. Before we enter any expense lines, this quick start menu up here will have, this menu will change once we actually add a line. But before you add a line of an existing report, you can copy from an existing report that you submitted. So if you're doing consistent travel or if you have an annual convention, come in here, you can copy from your previous expense report, just change the dates, maybe amounts, and then submit it and be on your way. The attachments, there are 2 places for attachments. So you guys will be scanning your receipts in and attaching it electronically on your expense report. There's going to be 2 places to attach it. The business office would like you to use the line level, which is, there's a little paper clip down here. The header level, you may want to attach like your travel authorizations up there, something, or maybe a brochure of the trip that you're going on. But specific receipts for like your hotel, parking, things like that would be attached at the line level. To do attachments, you just click on the link. Any kind of attachment you can use, it could be a PDF, Word, Excel, any type of file is acceptable. So you just have to find it, upload it, and it does date and time stamp all of this. It tells the user that uploaded it and the date and time it was uploaded. The nice thing about this is there's security behind this so that only the traveler can remove an attachment. After you submit it down the, once it gets in the approval workflow, nobody down that workflow can remove any attachments or notes that you attach to it. Only the traveler has access to do that. But everybody can view that, so keep in mind anything that is entered in here is viewable by down the chain.
We lost their screen.
Just hit the enable, disable, and it'll come back.
And then up here, notice that there's a 1. Down here, it's a little different. Once you attach it, there's a little green plus icon right here. I know it's kind of hard to see. After you attach it, that blue or that green icon will disappear. So that'll indicate that something's attached.
We can attach more than one.
Yes. Yep. So your expense type is the description of the expense that you're entering. So you can, there's this drop-down button here that you can scroll through and find it. I like using this little icon here. We have expense type categories. And we have everything grouped here. So anything that's related to in-state travel is right here. So you don't have to sit and scroll through that list. So this is, I use this all the time when I do my entries. I'm just going to do in-state today as an example. So obviously in-state airfare is not very reasonable, but realistic. So based on the expense type that's chosen, all the other fields for that line will be displayed based on that expense type. And different fields will be required based on that expense type. So sometimes the description field is not required, like for hotel, for example. You just enter a description, amount. So notice that this location did not, it's blank up here, and that's because I did not have this default location set up. We created a mod to display the state behind the fields. Otherwise, after you selected the city, there wouldn't be any way to see if you selected the wrong Bismarck. So this is another way to double check that you're using the right expense. I will have to enter it on this one because I didn't have it set before. So the important thing is the location is where you're going to, originating location. We have brought in everyone's location based on their HR profile, where they're associated with. So even if you work remotely and you're in Valley City, that should pull in correctly for you. If it doesn't, let the business office know, and they can change it on your user profile. The location where you're going to, that is driving any per diems that we upload. So we're uploading everything within the continental US. So anything to Hawaii and Alaska will not be uploaded. It's just the continental US. We're uploading the per diem rates and then also the lodging rates. Everything is effective data, so if you are traveling and the rates happen to change, it will be based off this date range, and it will automatically adjust your rates for you, so you don't have to be looking up rates anymore. Yes?
I have a quick question about this. We just traveled to Bismarck,
Yep.
and when we looked up, Lisa and I, it showed the meals or the per diem was 51. Now my default location was Butner. That's where I belong.
Yep.
Do we change that to Bismarck to get the rate in Bismarck, because we were given 35 instead of 51?
Well, your in-state is 35 per diem.
Great.
Okay. But when we looked on one of those websites,
It
Lisa.
was the GSA site.
Yeah, we don't get 100%
Yeah.
GSA rate
Oh.
when we travel. We only get 80%, I think, or 90%. Okay, so keep in mind the location is what's driving the amount. Obviously, the airfare is not going to drive an amount there, but for lodging and per diems, it will, or per diems particularly, it will drive that amount. Ticket number is required. This is validating the ticket number system-wide. So if you do happen to get a message, that means somebody at some other campus had entered that same ticket number. It's highly unlikely that that'll ever happen. Just keep in mind, if it does happen, that is why. Lisa, for baggage, are you guys coding it to airfare or miscellaneous travel?
Miscellaneous it goes under.
Okay, you guys won't run into that problem. For the merchant, you just simply enter who you bought it from. Just use a default, non-preferred. We're not using preferred at this time. So the funding source down here, the account number is being driven by this expense type. The account number should never be changed because it is, like I said, it is based off the expense type. The fund and department are being brought in from your HR profile. So whatever your primary position is within HR, we're automatically bringing in the fund and department. That's just a default. If it's wrong, it can be changed on your profile. So how that's working, if you have multiple positions, whatever the higher percentage is, we're bringing that row in. If it's a 50-50 split, we're just simply bringing in the first sequence row in. So again, if your funding source is wrong, let the business office know. If you happen to use multiple funding sources, we can leave them blank, and you can enter them in every time you enter an expense report. They're just defaults. So they can be removed or they can be changed.
And we can add in, we can have multiple funding sources for each line.
Yes, yep. To do that, if you want to do that for one particular row, you scroll to the right, there's a plus button where you can add another line. After you add a line, remember I said that this menu changes? So once I add a line, there's a default accounting for report. So you can do this after the fact, so keep that in mind. You come in here, enter all your lines, come in here, default funding for a report, and then put in your funding source here, and it'll automatically apply it to all the lines on your report. Great. So then here you would add chart field line, however many times you want to separate it out. So to add another line, you just click the plus button. Is there any questions that anybody has on the airline? So then just keep in mind for any receipts, you'll click this icon here and then attach it same as above. And then up here, I have to save it for it. You can save or save for later. And then it'll put in the name and the timestamp. So I'm just going to keep working my way down the line. Next, we're going to do lodging. So the description is not required here. We are not using these links at this time. They work, but they're a little cumbersome. It's just easier to come in and add them. It basically lets you go in there and kind of enter in all your expenses if you want to separate them out, and it'll populate different lines for you, but it's just as fast, I found, to come in here and add it, so it's not a huge time saver. So the merchant, non-preferred again, just put in where you're staying at. Pretty self-explanatory. One difference for the lodging, it's based on the number of nights and the amount for that total stay at the vendor that you're staying at. So we don't care if the rate changes every night. We just want a total amount for your stay for that, for apparatus, and it doesn't matter what, if the rates change each night. So when I said that we brought in the lodging rates, we don't actually populate anything with those lodging rates. However, what we do is we put in a 15% variance. Whatever the GSA rate is for that location that you're staying at, we added 15% to account for taxes, things like that. So you notice once I added a new one, there's a red flag here. So if we click on this comment, all it's asking is for a normal stay based on GSA rates, you should be $94.19. You're above that 15% threshold. Why? You're going to run into this a lot, when you go to conventions because they have resort fees, all things, sorts like that. So it's not preventing you from submitting your expense report. It's just asking why you're going over that 15%. I think the highest tax that I've seen so far is 12%, so 15% should cover most of those fees that you may run into. So now our flag went away, and it's just a little hazard icon. So this will kind of, for the approvers, this will kind of just flag this one line for this transaction throughout the workflow, just for auditing purposes, to let them know that there's an exception.
So for in-state, normally there wouldn't be a tax charge when we're talking about on-state.
Yeah, most of the time you're going to run into it when you go on-state. Yeah. Or even if, in-state, if you do happen to be at a place and they, there's no in-state rate available. So that would be one, it would try to flag it and to say no, the explanation. All right, so for North Dakota, we automatically default everything in for the $35. What we've been doing at CTS is if we're not claiming something, we enter that in the description. Or if you're on a day trip and you're making multiple stops, there's another, we'll show that next, there's a meals in state non-taxable, or taxable, I mean. So in there, in the description, you would say, I went to here, 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 and then notice that there's also a date, time down here at the bottom. So this time is not driving anything, it's for reporting purposes only, it's for auditing purposes. So if we left after 7 o'clock, we wouldn't be able to claim breakfast. If breakfast is served at the hotel, if there's a continental breakfast, you can't claim it. Things like that. So we're just saying we left after 7 o'clock. So to reduce it, we click on this per diem deductions link. And this is a deduction flag, so what you're not claiming, you check. And then this is a percentage, not the amount. So this will automatically deduct 20%, move it down to 28 and 35. If you're making, or if you have multiple nights, you have to enter per diem for every night that you're gone, or every day that you're gone. So the location is the important piece here. The location is driving the GSA rate that we're pulling from. If you try to override this, you can override it, but it won't. Like for athletics, there's a lot of them that have like a flat rate for athletics. We're going to have to do a special expense type for that. Just keep in mind, if you override it and try to come in here and do this per diem deductions, it's still going to go to the original amount. It's not going to base it off the amount that you overrode it to. So this is the meals taxable, no overnight stay. So select this if you're on a day trip and you're back that night. There will be functionality where we're going to be interfacing with HR. Right now it's a manual process that the business office has to do to go in and look at people's expense reports and then manually add it on their gross taxable pay. There will be functionality after the HR upgrade that'll all happen automatically. So I know Lisa might be excited about that. Probably the only one in the room. So mileage. Description is not required, but I guess we've just been putting a short description in here. The state or the transportation ID, do you know what rate you guys are using for the?
If they use their own vehicle, it's 40 cents a mile.
40, okay, so stately rate. So keep in mind, this is only for personal reimbursements. If you're taking a state fleet vehicle, you do not need to enter it on here. Also, any key card transactions don't go in this. This is only for personal reimbursements. So everybody will have this this transportation ID here. So we're also loading the mileage rates based on OMB. Fortunately, it's not smart enough to calculate the miles from Grand Forks to Bismarck for you. So you do have to know the mileage, but it will it'll automatically calculate your mileage for you based on the rate. And then we also maintain this rate when OMB changes it. We'll maintain that for you as well. If you're traveling out of state and you surpass that 300 miles, you will have to add a separate line and calculate the difference for that 18 cents a mile. I don't know how frequently that happens, but okay.
So I just had a question on
Yes.
hotel. If we direct bill, that wouldn't go on
That
this.
wouldn't go on there,
That would
no.
go on the.
Only if you're paying for it out of your pocket.
Yeah.
Is the only time it will go on that travel expense report.
And then other than that, then we fill out a regular expense voucher.
You fill out the regular voucher so we can pay the motel. Yep.
So as Lisa mentioned, baggage is going to be listed under miscellaneous travel. So you would have to come in and add that location. It doesn't matter for this type of expense type. You can put in a city there, but like I said, it's not a required field here. So this is not only travel related, but for any type of personal reimbursement. So if you go out and buy office supplies, things like that, that all will be submitted through this module now. Location
While
is-
we're on that trip, or while during that period.
or even here, I mean, if you run down to the local hardware store to buy something.
Okay, so that eliminates some of the expense voucher ones that we're doing now.
But if
Yes.
it's only if you pay for it out of your pocket though.
Okay.
Right, yep.
With the baggage, was there a place to attach a receipt to?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
And I will be printing these off for everybody, but it's kind of a nifty how-to. So, and I'll place them in everybody's mailbox. So, and I have little notes and stuff attached, so.
50.
And
Lisa, will you email those to us in Valley City too, please?
Yep,
Thank you.
you bet.
It's already saved it once, but there's actually a comma in here. This is save or save for later. So I already did this earlier. After you save it, it'll assign a report ID, and then the status will automatically go to pending. So anything pending means that it's still in your bucket. After you submit it, it'll go directly to the HR supervisor for their approval. That's basically saying that they're just okaying, yes, my employee is traveling, I'm aware of it, and I'm okay with it. I'll kind of go through the workflow here on this next step. Is there any questions or any scenarios that you want to go over before I move on to the summary and submit.
So our receipts that we need to attach will only be scanned
Yes.
and then attached?
Yes. And for receipts, the employee will be responsible for holding on to them. So there's two things for the receipts. There's NUS Procedure 1901.4. You have to maintain a paper copy of a receipt for at least 3 months, basically. If there's any federal expenditures associated with it, with the federal acquisition reg, you have to keep it at least 1 year. So we're telling people to at least keep all paper copies at least for 1 year. I keep mine for 3 just because, but you have to keep it for at least 1 year. After that, you can throw it.
I just started a file folder that says travel expenses.
Yeah.
Just stick them in there.
Can we group all our receipts under one PDF? Can we put them all on one page, just, or do we need to identify each as a separate?
It would probably be better if you put it on each line that it was supposed to be on, like if you had a hotel receipt, if you had like for your airline baggage or whatever. That way it's a lot cleaner, I would think.
With that being said, you can still scan it into one PDF and then break the PDF up.
Yep.
Do we submit receipts for meals?
No.
No, okay.
Okay, so on the summary and submit page, it just gives you a very high-level overview of.
Your call will be disconnected.
This is supposed to be over at 11.
Oh.
The next sessions are supposed to start right now.
Oh.
Does it automatically reconnect?
No, it's not going to reconnect unless I go down to my office.
Do you want me to hold on or keep going?
Just keep going because we're recording it, so.
Okay, all right. So the summary and submit page gives you a high-level overview of your expense
Put it
reports.
back on the screen, please. Sorry.
Yes. Over here, it'll be the total for the expense report. For cash advances, most of the other amounts on here will be zero. The only exception may be employee credits. For cash advances, do you do any cash advances? Okay, never mind. I won't do that. View printable version, it basically gives you this expense report, and it looks like this. There's no accounting lines to it. This is all that is with it. The only thing that I use this report for is after I had it to my administrative assistant. I staple all my receipts together and put this with it, and then that's it. I don't think any other campuses are really using this report for anything. View analytics, if you do have split funding, this is kind of a nice little summary for you. It does it by day. Obviously, we only did 1 day, so everything's grouped here. It gives you totals by department and then totals by project and activity. So it just gives you a nice little summary of the expenses for that trip. The notes section, are you guys going to be requiring anything in the notes? Okay. So what we're using this for is, because the description only has 30 characters on it. So this is if you need more room to explain something about your trip. This week I'm all over the state, so I'm, for every day I'm telling them what city I'm in and what I'm doing in the city. No other place to really put that.
I think for miscellaneous, we usually put something in this question, don't we? I mean.
Yeah, you could put that like if you had like missing, your baggage or whatever, or your registration fees or anything like that.
Yeah. Or in the description, so I think you have 250 characters in the description.
Put it there instead.
Oh, one thing I wanted to cover, the description here, for those that run the budget or budget transaction detail report, this description shows up on the report for those who that run that. So after you review everything, I don't know if you can tell it after I added a note, there's little squiggle marks in that pop-up box now. That indicates that a note has been added. So we'll just click this, verify that everything is accurate, and submit. And then it just asks, are you sure? So after we do that, you'll see this red line up here that tells you it's been submitted for approval. If you refresh this approval status, you get to look at your workflow. This is CTS's workflow, keep in mind not knows. So after you submit the expense report, it's going to go to your HR supervisor. If it's being routed to somebody that it shouldn't be, this is all coming from HR, so something needs to be updated in HR. The positions need to be changed in HR to correct that.
So if you charge to different funds, do those that manage those funds all get to sign off on it?
The way,
If it's set up correctly and.
but what we did this morning is just, you're the expense manager, so you're
Yeah.
going to be signing off on everybody. If you want department level approvals, then we have to set up a signer for each department. So right now, Lisa's going to be that person signing off on the funds. So after the HR supervisor, it's the expense manager, which is going to be Lisa. After that approval for you guys, it's going to go to a prepay audit, which will be Judy and Lisa Mock. You guys don't have two prepay audit. We have an SLA with UND, so they do it once over at their office too. So after the prepay audit does their approval, then it's good to go for payment. So after the prepay audit approves it, you guys will receive an email that says your expense report has been approved but not yet paid. After they run the pay cycle, do you guys run twice a week?
Usually, yeah.
Okay. So there may be a delay. Just keep in mind, you're going to get two emails. One that says it's been approved, not yet paid, and after the pay cycle runs that night, you'll get an email saying that your expense report has been paid. It'll still take a day or two for the money to be in your account. And then you can come and check your expense report at any time to see where it's at in the process. So to view any report that you have submitted in the past, it's under Review Report. I should have explained this. This little double arrow here, you can click this double arrow up here to hide that panel, and then it's just on the right side to expand it again. So under View Report, if you just click Search, it'll bring up every expense report that you've submitted in the past. If you get something sent back to you, or if, like for me, I started my expense report on, actually I'm only doing one for this full entire month, so I started it weeks ago. To view or to get access to anything that's in your bucket, it's under the Create Edit report. And rather than add a value, it's just find an existing value. And if you click Search, there's nothing here, but it'll bring up all the expense reports that are in your bucket.
So you had mentioned you do it by month. What are our guidelines? Can we do, if we make a lot of short trips, can we put them all in one?
You can, but your longer trips, it would be nice to have them in. As they happen, yeah. But if it's like your, farm visits or whatever, you can do those all in one. So, and just make sure that it's for that month, don't have like 2 days in August and then the rest of them in July. Start, month to month.
So the different statuses here, submitted means that you have submitted it, but your supervisor has not approved it yet. So it hasn't really gotten into the workflow. It does have to pass a budget check before the HR supervisor approves it. So if there's no money in the funding source that you identified on the report, or if it doesn't, there's combo edits. So you, in the system, we say for this fund, you can only use this department. So if you have stuff mixed matched in the accounting string, it'll error out. It won't pass that budget check. So if that happens, I'm assuming they just contact Lisa, and then she will help. So submitted means that it has not yet been approved. It's just in your HR supervisor's bucket. In process means that it's past the HR supervisor, but hasn't been approved all the way, so it's somewhere in the middle. And then there is a staged one, which means that it's ready for payment, but the pay cycle hasn't been ran yet. And then paid is obviously in your bank account. So that's all I had. there any questions or scenarios that you want to go through
One more time, when will this be in place for us?
right now?
It went in effect July 1st.
Yep,
So we can go in and do it right now?
right. It's actually suggested, you know, we're recommending going there right away, don't wait another month or two, obviously if you have something to submit.
We're going through how you got there.
I'll send you the link.
Yeah,
I'll send out a mass email to everybody with the link to get on there, so.
there is a blue page, I mean, you can, it's based off this page, so it's just admin.ndus.edu, but there's a lot of stuff in here. But it's the fraud environment under financials, so that's another way to get there. Any other questions?
One more question, I might have missed this. If we're using a personal vehicle to travel to Bismarck, and we enter Bismarck, it automatically calculates the miles for
It
us?
does not calculate the miles.
Let's say there's numerous times where you go to Bismarck and you might make 5 stops.
Right,
and
yep.
Put on a lot.